You wouldn't understand corporate at your level, Robert.
But Robert understood more than anyone at that table could ever imagine. Sunday dinners at Brandon and Jennifer's house had become a weekly ritual of quiet humiliation for the 71-year-old retiree.
We just locked in a $400 million acquisition. The visionary CEO himself praised my work. Stick to fishing, Robert. Real business isn't for you.
Soon they'll see. The old man isn't as simple as they think.
Robert only refilled his wine, his calm smile never wavering. Later that night, Robert picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years.
Cranston, it's time. Call an emergency board meeting. I'll be attending in person.
The quiet retiree had just set in motion a reckoning that would shatter his son-in-law's world. Over the following weeks, the Sunday dinners blurred into a familiar ritual of condescension.
That CEO of mine, he's a genius, unlike some people around this table.
Brandon, that is enough. My father has forgotten more than you will ever know.
Please, Jen. Your dad is a nice guy, but he is out of his depth.
Robert's expression never flickered, but somewhere deep, a clock was ticking. One afternoon at his cabin, Robert paused outside the kitchen. Brandon's voice carried from the speakerphone.
The old man thinks he knows business. I have to humor him for Jennifer.
Robert's hand tightened around the doorframe. The decision now had a deadline.
You want to see what the old man really knows, Brandon. You will.
That night, Robert confirmed the board meeting. 3 weeks. The countdown began. The 3 weeks passed in two parallel worlds. Robert prepared in silence while Brandon basked in triumph. On a sunlit morning, Robert met Cranston on a park path. The attorney handed over a thick folder.
Everything is in order, sir. The board has been notified that the controlling shareholder will attend.
Good. Has Brandon Reeves been informed?
He received the email this morning. He thinks he's being promoted.
A flicker of dark amusement crossed Robert's face before he turned his gaze toward the lake. 40 years earlier, in a cramped office with a second-hand desk, a younger man had built an empire from nothing.
I didn't build all this to watch a boy like Brandon tear it down with disrespect.
That night, Robert sat alone and signed the termination letter that would end his son-in-law's career. Robert slid the signed letter into his old leather briefcase and locked it. Tomorrow, Brandon would learn the truth. The night before the meeting, Robert sat at his son-in-law's dinner table for what would be the last time.
The controlling shareholder wants to meet me personally, Jen. This is the big one. Look, he's attending in person for the first time in 8 years. He's been watching my work.
Or maybe he's been watching something else, Brandon.
You worry too much. Even your father would be proud if he had half a clue.
Sometimes, Brandon, the people you overlook hold the keys to your future.
That's rich, coming from a fisherman. But thanks for the advice, old-timer.
After dinner, Brandon retreated to his office, already tasting the promotion.
I hope this meeting gives you what you've earned.
Robert drove home under a moonless sky, the letter in his briefcase like a heartbeat. The morning of the meeting arrived, crisp and expectant. Brandon Reeves stood before his bedroom mirror.
Today, the silent owner finally shakes my hand. This is my moment, Jen.
Just be careful what you wish for, Brandon.
But Brandon was already sliding into his jacket, her warning lost in the rhythm of his ambition. At his cabin, Robert unzipped a garment bag and lifted out a charcoal suit that had hung untouched for years. The fabric slipped over his shoulders like a second skin. 40 years of power folded into the seams. He fastened the silver cufflinks, a gift from his late wife, and met his own eyes in the mirror.
40 years of silence. 40 years of watching. Today, the old fisherman cashes in.
Outside, his aging pickup sat beside a sleek sedan. Brandon had arrived to collect him, still thinking they'd ride together. But Robert drove himself, the old engine humming a patient, deadly tune. The boardroom was waiting. Brandon Reeves stepped through the revolving doors of the corporate headquarters with the stride of a man who believed he owned the place.
Morning, Sandra. Tell the board I am right on time.
Alone in the elevator, he checked his reflection again, mouthing the words he had practiced.
I am honored to finally meet you, sir. Your vision has been an inspiration.
Meanwhile, Robert pulled into a private underground garage. Cranston was waiting beside the service elevator.
The board is assembled, sir. Mr. Reeves is already seated.
Then let's not keep him waiting.
Brandon took a seat near the middle of the long mahogany table, his spine straight, his expectations sky high. His eyes landed on the empty chair at the head, larger, more ornate, and a pulse of anticipation raced through him. Around him, board members murmured and glanced toward the closed doors. The air thickened with the waster's doors the unknown. The boardroom hummed with low voices, each executive speculating about the mysterious controlling shareholder.
He's been watching my work personally. Trust me, this is just a formality.
A senior board member leaned in. No one's seen the founder in decades. They say he built the empire from a shed.
The founder, not just the owner. This is bigger than I thought.
Then the door handle turned. The sound cut through the whispers like a blade. Every head snapped toward the entrance. Brandon's pulse thundered in his ears. The door parted a few inches, and a long shadow fell across the polished floor.
This is it. My life changes in the next 60 seconds.
The room plunged into absolute silence. Nobody breathed. The door creaked wider, revealing the silhouette of a man in a charcoal suit. But the face remained in shadow. The door swung fully open, and Mr. Cranston stepped inside, then moved deliberately aside. The silhouette in the charcoal suit followed. As he moved into the light, the face became clear. Brandon's mind refused to connect the image. Silver hair, trimmed beard, calm eyes that had watched him from a dinner table for years.
Number! It's not possible. That can't be Robert.
The boardroom contracted into a vacuum. Not a breath, not a whisper, just the sound of expensive shoes on the floor.
The fisherman! The man I laughed at. He's the founder.
Robert walked to the head of the table, the chair that had waited 8 years for its occupant. He lowered himself into it with practiced ease. He placed his hands flat on the mahogany, looked at the frozen faces, and let the silence press down like a verdict. Cranston stepped forward, a thick manila folder in his hands. Brandon's world was about to fold in on itself. The fisherman had cast his line, and the hook was already deep. Robert let the silence stretch another 5 seconds, then leaned back in the chairman's seat.
I founded this company 40 years ago. Most of you have never seen my face, but you've lived under my decisions. I've watched the $400 million acquisition closely. It's impressive work, but that's not why I am here.
His gaze swept the table and stopped on Brandon like a spotlight.
Before we proceed, there's a matter of corporate culture I need to address, and it concerns someone at this table.
He's going to do it, right here, in front of everyone.
Brandon's throat closed. He could not look away.
Mr. Reeves, you've given this board a great deal to consider over the years. Today, I'd like to return the favor.
Robert's knuckles whitened against the mahogany. The trap had sprung. Robert nodded to Cranston, who laid the manila folder before him with deliberate ceremony.
Sunday, March 12th. This table, this wine. You told me to stick to fishing because real business wasn't for me. April 2nd. On speakerphone, you said the old man thinks he knows business. You just humor him for Jennifer.
Brandon's mouth opened, but Cranston raised a single hand. The sound died in his throat.
I have 47 pages of notes, Mr. Reeves. Every dinner, every comment, every sneer you thought went unheard.
Board members exchanged glances. A senior director pushed his glasses up and looked at Brandon as if seeing him for the first time.
You worshipped a visionary CEO who never existed. The man you mocked for years was the architect of everything.
He saved everything. Every word, every joke. I have nothing left.
Robert closed the folder and let the quiet absorb the weight of the evidence. The prosecution had rested. Brandon was no longer a vice president at that table. He was a case study in arrogance, stripped bare.
So, Mr. Reeves, do you still believe I wouldn't understand corporate at my level?
I never meant it was just. Please, you have to understand.
Brandon's knuckles blanched against the edge of the table. his rehearsed confidence crumbling into dust.
You never had to mean it. The words were enough. Every Sunday, every call, they told me exactly who you are. That VP position you've been so proud of. I created it. 14 months ago, I arranged the search firm, the interview panel, everything.
Brandon's mind reeled. The promotion he had celebrated, the bonus, the praise, every bit of it had been a lie.
I wanted to see if you would treat everyone with respect. The fisherman, the retiree, the man who poured your wine. You failed, Brandon. Not just as a son-in-law, but as a human being.
It was all a test. My whole career here. And I failed because I couldn't stop talking down to an old man.
The weight of the revelation pressed him into his chair. He was not a rising star. He was a failed experiment. Robert's voice softened just a fraction, the way a prosecutor does before the closing argument.
My daughter Jennifer, your wife holds the controlling interest in this company. Every slight you dealt to me was a slight against her legacy. So tell me, Mr. Reeves, what would you recommend this board do with a man who built his career on the backs of those he considered beneath him?
The room held its breath. Brandon's lips parted, but nothing emerged.
I have no words, no defense. He's right. Everything he said is true.
Cranston removed a crisp white envelope from the manila folder and placed it before Robert.
Since you cannot articulate a standard of conduct, I'll provide one. This company does not tolerate arrogance that poisons from within.
Robert's hand rested on the envelope. His eyes never left Brandon's face.
You've spent years telling me to stick to fishing. Now watch me reel in the biggest catch of my career.
The envelope hung between them, heavy as a verdict. Brandon's career balanced on the edge of that paper. Robert took the envelope from Cranston's outstretched hand and held it between his fingertips, weighing the verdict. Then he slid it across the polished mahogany, the motion smooth and final.
Smart thinking, Mr. Reeves. That is what you always say, isn't it?
The words landed like a blade. Brandon's face drained of what little color remained.
He's using my own catchphrase against me. The final humiliation.
Brandon's hand trembled as he reached for the envelope, the fingers of a man who knew what was inside.
You have been telling me to stick to fishing. This is me, casting the line and pulling you under.
The board members stared, some with open mouths, others with averted eyes. No one moved to intervene.
I have to open it. There is no way back from this.
The envelope lay before him like a tombstone. All his arrogance, his sneers, his condescension, reduced to a single sheet of paper.
Robert, please think of Jennifer. She's your daughter. Don't do this to her.
Robert's expression didn't flicker. If anything, the mention of his daughter pulled his posture even tighter.
You should have thought of Jennifer before you laughed at her father across every Sunday dinner table.
I know I was wrong. I see it now. Let me make it right for her. I'll do anything.
You made your choices at every dinner, every phone call, every chance you had to show basic respect. Jennifer will understand.
Robert raised a hand. A simple gesture, and Cranston moved to the side door. The air in the room chilled. 2 security officers in dark suits stepped into the boardroom, their expressions professionally blank.
You are not serious. This is family. You can't.
Family doesn't mock family. Family doesn't spend years treating the patriarch like a punchline.
The officers positioned themselves behind Brandon's chair. He was still seated, but his freedom had already evaporated.
Mr. Reeves, you are hereby terminated effective immediately. These officers will escort you to collect your personal effects.
The order rippled through the boardroom, a cold wave washing over the stunned executives. Brandon's chair scraped against the polished floor with a shriek as he rose on trembling legs.
I was supposed to be promoted. I was supposed to be celebrated.
He searched the faces around the table, but every pair of eyes was a closed door. He walked toward the exit, the security officers shadowing his every step. The heavy door of the boardroom swung shut, and the sound was deafening. Robert remained seated, his composure an iron shield. Through the window, He watched the city skyline, his thoughts his own. The fisherman had not only caught his fish, he had filleted it in front of the whole ocean. At the threshold, before the security officers could guide him further, Brandon Reeves stopped and turned his head. Robert's eyes met his for one last second. A shadow of sorrow flickered behind them, the weight of what had been lost. Then the door closed with a heavy click, severing the connection. The boardroom exhaled. A collective breath held for too long finally released. Robert straightened the manila folder before him and cleared his throat.
Now, let's get back to business.
The other executives glanced at one another, then at their agendas. The meeting resumed as if nothing had happened. But everyone in that room knew nothing would ever be the same. Brandon Reeves had been erased from the company he once boasted would be his kingdom, and the old fisherman simply picked up his pen to sign the next resolution. An hour later, the meeting adjourned. Robert rose from the chairman's seat without hurry. In the private corridor, Cranston fell into step beside him.
You handled the board well, Cranston, as always.
It was a necessary correction, sir. The company is stronger for it.
Robert nodded but said nothing more. The private elevator carried him down to the garage. Minutes later, his old pickup rumbled out into the late afternoon light.
I did what had to be done, but the look on Jennifer's face when she finds out, that will be the real cost.
He drove without the radio, the hum of the engine his only companion.
40 years of building, and I never imagined I'd have to tear down my own son-in-law.
But the scales had needed balancing, and tonight he would sleep knowing they finally were. Across town, Brandon Reeves sat alone in a diner booth, the same expensive suit now a rumpled testament to his fall. His phone buzzed against the Formica. The screen lit up with Jennifer's name.
I can't answer. I can't face her. Not after today.
He let it ring until voicemail, then stuffed the device into his pocket like a confession he couldn't make. He pushed his untouched coffee aside and walked out into the evening chill. In the parking lot, he found his car, the polished sedan now a hollow emblem of a life he had lost.
I had everything. The promotion, the status, the future. And I threw it away on pride.
He slid behind the wheel and gripped it with both hands, but the road forward had never been less clear.
She's going to find out anyway. And when she does, I don't know if there's anything left to save.
He sat in the darkening car, the engine off, alone with the weight of what he had finally understood. When Brandon finally shuffled through the front door, the house was too quiet. Jennifer stood in the living room, waiting. Her phone was still in her hand, her father's words fresh in her memory. She didn't need to ask if the rumors were true.
Why? Why would you treat him like that for years? He's my father, Brandon.
I was blind. I thought he was just a simple old man I didn't know.
She shook her head, tears threatening but not falling. She had already cried enough.
You didn't know because you never looked. You never saw him as anything more than a punchline. I can't be in this house with you tonight. I need to think.
She picked up her car keys from the console, her movements deliberate, final. At the door, she paused and slipped off her wedding ring. She set it on the entryway table, the small sound louder than any scream. The cabin door swung open before she could knock. Robert had been waiting. She collapsed into him, sobs shaking her shoulders, and he held her as if to absorb all her pain. He guided her inside, to the worn armchair, and let her cry until the tears ran dry. When she could speak, they moved to the porch. The night air cooled her cheeks.
Why didn't you tell me sooner, Dad? All those years, watching him mock you.
Because you needed to see him for yourself. I could have forced your eyes open, but you had to choose to see.
She nodded slowly, the weight of understanding settling over her.
I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't let him poison what your mother and I built.
Jennifer leaned into him, their shoulders touching, and the silence between them became a bridge. For the first time in years, Robert felt the balance of justice and love finally align. An hour later, Jennifer's car pulled away, taillights shrinking through the pines. Robert stood on the porch until the sound dissolved. He did not move for a long moment, feeling the empty space where her hand had rested. Then he walked down the wooden steps, the grass cool under his shoes, and followed the familiar path to the water. The lake was black glass, reflecting only a few early stars. He stopped at the water's edge. Robert closed his eyes and breathed in deep, the way a man does when a long-held weight finally lifts.
You would have been proud of her tonight, Margaret.
He stayed there, still and solitary, the quiet of the lake wrapping around him like a familiar coat. The victory was his, but the scar would remain. He accepted both. At last, he turned back toward the cabin, his steps steady, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. The old fisherman had finally come home. The next morning broke soft and golden over the lake, mist rising in lazy spirals. Robert sat in his old chair by the water, the rod resting easy in his hands. He closed his eyes, letting the sun warm his skin, the quiet filling every crack. A faint smile tugged at his lips, the smile of a man who had weathered the storm. The bobber danced on the surface, but he didn't mind if the fish came or not. The sun climbed higher, painting the lake in shades of hammered gold. He thought of Jennifer, of her strength, and knew she would be all right. The past was past, and the future would unfold. But this moment was his, and the lake, as always, asked nothing, gave everything. Robert opened his eyes to the light, and the world felt exactly as it should.